Welcome to Spirit Talks, because your spirit talks to you.
Hello and welcome to Spirit Talks. I'm Susie Beiler.
And I'm Maximilliam Haver.
In this episode, we are talking about the inner child.
Thanks for joining us and enjoy. So, Susie, you do inner child work with clients and you've done much inner child work with yourself. Can you share with us your idea of what the inner child is?
The inner child is that part of ourselves that's very raw and vulnerable, and for almost everyone has experienced some kind of trauma that needs to be healed. And so when we talk about it, we don't have to think of it in terms of something that needs healing, but it is an aspect of ourselves that we need to integrate so that we can be in our whole and full expression.
Now, why is this called the inner child and not just that raw, vulnerable aspect of ourselves? Why is it called the inner child?
Probably because it's related to that part of ourselves that is still living within us that is a child. So we all have many parts of ourselves, and there is that aspect within us that wants to play, that wants to be free, that wants to be a little kid sometimes. And oftentimes in our lives, we hold back that part of ourselves, or we feel limited because as adults there are certain expectations upon us about how we should act and how we should conduct ourselves in the world, and sometimes that play aspect is forgotten. And sometimes we hold ourselves back from that expression because we have a wound within our inner child. Something that might have happened to us when we were young, an infant, a baby, a toddler, or a little older also, that we haven't quite resolved. And the only way to find our wholeness within that is to address the wound. And sometimes there's more than one wound. And so it really takes willing to be honest with yourself, to look at what's going on inside of me. How is my little girl or my little boy feeling? And sometimes we're not aware of what's happening, that it is in fact our little boy or our little girl that's trying to get our attention. And so we just keep living our life, not really realizing that there's this aspect within us that's demanding our attention, trying to get us to play and have fun, or trying to get us to look at the wound. And so it's really important to take time to make sure that we address any wounds, or to make sure that we are complete in that aspect of ourselves.
Now, how would someone go about connecting with that aspect?
Well, we've talked many times about these kinds of things and how it always starts with intention. So it does start with that intention to make the connection. And some people are able to do it on their own, and some people hire a practitioner. I would not say that I'm highly specialized in inner child work, but there are those who are, and that's their life's work, that's what they focus on. So someone like that would be a good practitioner to go to if you need a little bit of external support.
And after someone goes through all this work, are they complete with working with the inner child, or is it an aspect that continues to need attention?
I don't know if we're ever really complete as long as we're on this planet, right? So I do believe it is something that we always can check in with to see how our little girl or little boy is doing. And that's something that I do for myself when I really had a breakthrough with this. It was I had a friend working with me, and it was an intense, really addressing the issues of the inner child. And then what I did was I put little Susie on my chest, and I made a promise and a commitment to her that I would never leave her, that she could stay there as long as she liked, and that I would check in with her to see how she's doing. And if she started talking to me, that I would listen. And so for the couple, maybe 2, 3, 4 months after that, if she cried, I listened. If she was demanding my attention, I listened. And I would have a dialogue with her and a conversation to find out what was going on. And then something shifted where she was just a lot happier. And so I didn't need to constantly tune in with her. And now every once in a while, she'll get my attention and I'll, find out what's going on and address the issue. But mostly she's just kind of observing me now. She's just kind of like, checking me out, seeing what's going on with me. And in a way, she's almost taken on this role where she's like my mother or something, where like if I'm crying or in upset, sometimes she's confused about it. I'm like, well, why are you upset? And she's not upset about it, but she's just observing me being upset. So there's this very interesting dynamic in how things have shifted. Because before she was the one that was upset. But now that I'm paying attention to her and making sure she's taken care of, she is not in that same level of upset. She's just kind of observing what's going on for me. So it's a very interesting, something I would have never expected.
Now, how would someone approach this if they don't have that dialogue or connection or engagement with this aspect of themselves? How would they approach it?
Well, that's when I would suggest hiring a practitioner, because that person can give you ideas about how to talk with your inner child, how to make that connection. They can give you, certain key things to say to your inner child that your inner child needs to hear from you. Like for me, it was to make sure my little Susie knew that I was never, ever going to leave her again. That she got to walk through life with me. She really needed to hear that because she felt abandoned by me. So that's just an example of something a practitioner might encourage you to say, or to make some kind of promise or commitment. So if you're having trouble connecting, like I said, there are experts that this is their life's work, and they can help you through this process.
Now, why is going through this process important?
Well, it's part of our ascension. It's part of integrating all of our aspects. We had a conversation about our soul aspects. This is one of those aspects. If there are parts and pieces of us that are not integrated, we can only go so far on our ascension path. Max, would you like to share any of your experiences with your inner child?
Well, I've worked with intention, with connecting with my inner child, and I've done visualizations and breathing and that sort of thing. I've not had any personal feedback from any of that as far as my inner experience. So, I could continue try working with it, but it hasn't really substantiated any sort of like inner connection within myself, or feeling or sensation, or any sort of feedback that would engage me in that way. So that's just been my experience.
And because you receive information in a different way, in a different form, you're not having that same experience that I had with my inner child, but that doesn't mean that you are any less connected with your inner child. So that's something that's very important for our listeners to understand, is that just because you might not be getting anything so tangible like my experience doesn't mean that it's not working. It doesn't mean that you're not making that connection. The intention piece is very powerful. And so if you are intending to work with your inner child, you may not feel direct connection with your inner child, but you may notice that other things come up in your life. Other areas where you need to find your wholeness, other things that are needing healing. So pay attention to those little things if you're making that intention to heal your inner child.
Is there any other ideas or advice you would like to share with anyone looking to grow upon their path and engage with this inner child?
Yeah, it's going to take a strong willingness to see it through. because sometimes looking at these things don't feel good, and it's not always the easiest thing to do. So you have to be really willing to go there and to feel and to gain an understanding of what's going on a deeper level. So it is, part of this path of courage that we walk, part of addressing our shadow and all of that. And it's really a beautiful time to exercise self-love, self-compassion, self-nourishment. And that's probably what your inner child wants from you anyway. So it's a good time to practice all of that.
Sometimes I hear you mention your inner child coming out or coming forward whenever you're engaged in certain activities. Do you want to share this
Sure.
experience?
Yeah, well, that's just like, if I'm in a playful mood or, just being silly, that's when little Susie is happy because, little Susie likes to giggle and to play and to jump around and pretend she's a fairy and, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So another very practical thing you can do, build Legos, get a coloring book. Do some face painting or play with Play-Doh, something that a little child would do. And that might help also to spark that connection with your little boy or little girl.
That's a good idea.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. I would love to hear from you guys about how you've connected with your inner child. Any experiences you'd like to share, any questions that you have about it, any activities that you do maybe to connect with your inner child so that we can all get ideas from this and grow together. Lots of love to you all. I'll see you in the next episode.
May your play and expression shed light on your inner boy or inner girl.